Today on Israel Hayom Insider, as the race for the U.S. presidency takes unprecedented twists and turns, we look at the candidates' positions on issues of particular importance to the U.S. Israel relationship. With me in the studio, Allgemeiner web editor Ruthie Bloom.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Ruthie. I'm Steve Ganot. Okay, Ruthie, first of all, let's go through the candidates, okay?
Happily.
On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton is well ahead of her rival Bernie Sanders. She's got 69% of the delegates that have so far been assigned or elected, and she's almost halfway to winning the nomination. So it looks like she's got a big lead. Sanders is the Jewish candidate. He's the only Jew among the major candidates here. He spent some time in Israel working on a kibbutz. His Jewish identity doesn't seem to be a big part of his public persona. He's been asked about it. He's a proud Jew, but it's not, I don't think it really affects him one way or another. And he's from the progressive left end of the party, which has been very critical of Israel in general. So people are kind of worried about that. But he's also stood up to protesters who were, anti-Israel. And I think he's come out surprisingly pro-Israel, considering where he is within the Democratic Party. What do you think about Sanders?
Well, I think that Sanders is what his style is like an old-style socialist,
right? Which
appeals to some voters, interestingly, even some young voters. You'd think he wouldn't.
He's doing much better among the young voters.
Right. Now, either that's because a lot of the young voters don't actually know, they're not really, a lot of young voters in America are surprisingly or unfortunately ill-read.
All right, I'm going to disagree, but okay.
I think that some of them are, it's an anti-Hillary vote for some, which is true of all the candidates, by the way. You have two choices.
Right.
You often choose the lesser of two evils if you're not thrilled about either.
He's the anti-establishment candidate.
He's the anti-establishment candidate. And one thing we've seen now in America, judging by the Republicans as well, that the establishment, everyone is fed up with the establishment. And if you're an outsider, you gain popularity.
Okay, but come back to the Israel issue.
Now, the Israel issue, I think that Sanders, like the rest of the Democratic Party, is not anti-Israel or pro-Israel in the sense that conservatives mean. Mm-hmm. I think that Israel as part of a, let's say, free market economy, which Israel doesn't quite have, but it's aiming at that. I mean, that's what its aim is free market economy. Fighting against radical Islam. There are certain, let's say, parameters that you could say, what does that mean? What does Israel represent? And the Democratic Party tends to oppose a lot of those kind of old-style American values, capitalism and going to war against all enemies. That's not its natural ideological state, let's put it that way, of recent years. So Sanders, I would say, is not necessarily good or bad for Israel any more than he's good or bad for the United States. But he is a progressive, and that could be very bad for, if you believe that socialism destroys economies, then you would think that that's bad for the United States. And if it's bad for the United States, it's also bad for Israel.
Okay. Do you think there's any factor here of, Jewish pride, young Jews looking up and seeing, a Jew has gotten to the White House, in the same way that maybe
that Obama gathered support as a
yes, or Hillary with women, or Rubio and Cruz with the Hispanic community.
I got to tell you, it's very interesting about Jews. They're very different from blacks in this way, in the ethnic sense. Blacks said, "Wow. Okay, let's rally around our guy, a black in the White House. That's wonderful." Jews say, "Oi."
Yes,
a Jew, because one false move and everybody will hate us and it'll arouse anti-Semitism. Jews tend to be afraid to have a Jew in a big position.
Yeah,
so there's a real different ethnic attitude towards that.
Right. People are afraid that he's going to be like a lightning rod, and if he messes up, it reflects
Jews
badly on the Jews.
have a different attitude towards supporting someone who's a Jew.
Okay. Hillary Clinton.
Okay, Hillary Clinton is,
She's the
it's hard
establishment.
since we're trying to just discuss this, analyze this objectively. It's a little difficult. Now, Hillary Clinton is a known quantity, unlike Sanders. Hillary has not only been Secretary of State, but she occupied the White House when her husband was president.
Right, and she was a senator.
And she is in the news now all the time because of her email scandal. She was in the news because of the Benghazi scandal. She is a quantity that has a disadvantage of already having done things that are controversial, unlike Bernie Sanders.
Okay, but
Yet,
yeah.
she's still ahead of Sanders. She's still ahead of Sanders. And
Right.
it's possible that people prefer a known to an unknown. It
Yeah.
could be
Well,
that
she's
that
got,
could be her
she's got an
success.
awful lot of support from the superdelegates, okay,
Yes.
who are the party officials.
Yes.
She is the
Yes.
candidate of the establishment.
Right.
I think that her record is very similar to her husband's. That's what people are expecting of her. She is pro-Israel. She's a pro-Israel Democrat. She's not a Republican. She's her relationship with Netanyahu is mixed, let's say. I don't worry about her being anti-Israel. But on the other hand, if you support the Israeli right, she's probably not going to be your candidate.
Oh, absolutely not. What's interesting when you say pro-Israel, I think this is something that is relevant also to the next list of candidates. It depends what you mean by pro-Israel. I think people have different definitions of that, and if your definition of pro-Israel is that that this candidate will continue to supply Israel with aid or weapons, defense systems, and all that, I think you don't have to worry, because even under the Obama administration, which many people have accused of being anti-Israel, that stuff has continued.
Right. I want to add just quickly.
Okay.
I'm reading right now Dennis Ross's book, and he talks about basically two camps within the Obama administration. One being more outwardly pro-Israel, more interested in cooperating with Israel. The other camp being more seeing Israel more as a rival, more as a competitor to the United States in some way, more suspicious of the Netanyahu administration, et cetera. Clinton is in the pro-Israel camp within the Obama administration, so that's something to note. She's not one of, if there are elements within the Obama administration that have a poor attitude toward Israel or relationship with Netanyahu, it's not Clinton. I want to now move over to the Republicans. First of all, Marco Rubio. What do you think about Rubio and his record toward Israel?
Rubio has made several extremely pro-Israel speeches,
Yes.
even before he was a candidate.
Right.
It's on record. He has made speeches that, I wish an Israeli leader would make. Let's put it that way. He's made extremely, he has made no bones about it. His view, and he has said this repeatedly, is that Israel is the only democracy, with a free market democracy in the Middle East. It's the only natural ally in the Middle East, and that Israel is the good guy fighting bad guys. I mean, he's made a real distinction.
Right.
Okay,
And he's
those weren't the words he used.
he's come out strongly against the Iran deal. We should say
He's
that
strongly against the Iran deal.
all the Republicans
All
are
the
against,
Republicans are against
and
the
all the
Iran
Democrats
deal.
are for it.
Right.
Okay.
But aside from the Iran deal, he has made it clear that he believes that there is no parity, no moral or any other parity between Israel and the Palestinians. He says Israelis are on the right side of this. They are victims in this conflict. This is what Rubio has said. Now, aside from that, Rubio has certain things in his favor and certain strikes against him.
Okay.
The strike against him, as far as I can tell from what people say, is that he looks about 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, actually,
And he's way behind
not
her now.
much younger than Obama was when he became president. It
Yeah.
isn't his age.
Right.
Because also Sanders is talked about as though he's some old man, but he's not much older than Trump. So
Yeah.
it's not true. It's not his age. He looks
It's the appearance.
boyish.
Yeah.
But that's a strike against him, apparently. What is in his favor is that he's extremely charismatic and likable. He's charming. He's attractive.
Okay, I want to move on to Cruz.
Good.
Quickly.
Okay, Cruz.
Is there
yes.
is there a substantial difference in the positions between Cruz and Rubio? Because I can't. When it comes to Israel, I don't see them.
No, when it comes to Israel, there's no substantial difference. Cruz says the same things that Rubio does. But Cruz has a disadvantage in that he is duller. I mean, this
Sure.
again, obviously it's hard for me to stay neutral. I'm also watching.
Sure.
He has less charm when he talks and all that, and he has a reputation of being
Difficult.
certainly for difficult, and also certainly on the domestic front, which is not part of our discussion, a little more, less flexible when it comes to
Right.
the issues
Right.
that interest Americans inside.
And in particular, American Jews. I think American Jews would be more worried about Cruz than about Rubio. Maybe it's a
Right.
matter of style. Their positions aren't that different, but Cruz certainly comes off as being more of a threat when it comes to issues of religion and state, issues that domestically American Jews care about.
Right.
Okay, now we've come to the candidate that everyone wants to hear about, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, he's all over the place, right?
Totally.
He said he's pro-Israel. He said he wants to be neutral about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He talked about why, which makes some sense. He said if he wants to negotiate a deal, be a good negotiator, he's got to stay neutral and not blame either side. That actually is one of the more sensible things that I think he's said. But on the other hand, he's completely unpredictable, and he's got a certain.
Well, no, the reason it actually makes no sense that he
No
said
sense?
that.
Okay.
I'll tell you why it makes no sense that he said that, because up until saying that. He has had been, and still is, outrageous and outspoken on everything else,
Right.
including when he flip-flops. He then doubles down on the new position.
Sure.
But he never is even-handed about
Anything,
anything
right.
except on the Israeli-Palestinian issue.
Interesting.
And I think that is telling, because if he makes no bones about it, he says he'll rip up the Iran deal, he'll rip up Obamacare, he says this and he says that, he says about immigration, he says he'll prevent all Muslims from entering the United States. No, he didn't mean that. But when it comes to this one issue, suddenly he's statesman-like.
Mr. Diplomat, yeah.
Yeah. So for people who are looking to see what his positions on Israel, Israel are or will be, they got a little nervous.
Yeah. Also, he's embarrassed himself in the party and insulted so many different ethnic groups, and including Jews. And when he spoke to the Republican Jewish, what's it called?
The coalition, the
Republican Jewish Coalition, right? He talked about how they're all great deal makers, and they're not going to support him because they can't buy him, and they want to give and he's not going to accept their money. All kinds of things that really are very questionable, very if not outwardly anti-Semitic.
I think that it is rare to find Trump utter a sentence that isn't in some ways questionable about everything. I don't happen to think he's an anti-Semite in particular. I think he has said vulgar things and he attacks everyone. But I think the bigger question about Trump is not Trump. The bigger question is why somebody who has been so vulgar and rude to everybody when he's on the podium, when he's off the podium, why he's so popular. I think that is a different show.
Yeah.
But it is surprising. You would not have believed that a few months ago. You would have said, he's running, but he's a businessman, he's a rich guy, he had The Apprentice, he'll drop out.
Right.
And in fact, the opposite happened.
I think it's a product of the internet age. It's like this sort of direct democracy almost. I mean, people can say whatever they want, and these things don't go through all the channels we used to have, which would filter out all of the insults and all of the not ready for prime time kind of stuff. Now it all gets out there, and so the candidates themselves, well, in this case, one particular candidate himself is just letting it all hang out, in a very ugly way.
Absolutely, and he doesn't seem presidential when he does that, whatever that means. I mean, the fact is that all the other candidates, whether you support them or hate them, behave themselves, except when they're provoked by him, but otherwise they behave themselves properly.
Well, we're coming up now on the Florida primary. I think it's going to be make or break for Rubio. If Rubio doesn't win in Florida, I think he's going to be out. And then it's going to be Cruz versus Trump on the Republican side. I don't know what's going to happen. You can see already that the Republican establishment, including Mitt Romney, including other people high up in the party, are trying to move him out and get someone who's more presentable. But it may be impossible at this
I
point.
think, the interesting thing is I think what is unfair is that this whole discussion has become one of establishment versus not establishment. The reason I think it's unfair is that I don't believe that it's because Trump is not establishment that those other conservatives are going after him so strongly. I think it's because he's being vulgar and taking positions that don't even really jibe with the Republican Party. It's not that he's an outsider. It's that he's behaving himself so outrageously, and that I think needs to be said.
Yeah, I think you're right. Interesting. Well, we're gonna have to, stop this discussion because it's gone on for a long time. We could talk about it for hours. It's very interesting. And as the primaries go on, we'll end up with, it looks like it's probably going to be Trump versus Clinton, but maybe not. And then we'll have to talk later on about about who's going to be better for Israel. But Ruthie, thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you, Steve.
And thank you to the viewers for continuing to watch us, sending us your feedback. And we will see you next time.